Rebranding Evol, the story of the Church of Synanon cult, and the CEDU legacy. Alrighty, so let's just sort of get right into it, folks. We are going to be talking about Charles Diedrich and LSD, chemical mysticism, crash therapy. The roots go deep when it comes to Synanon and the things that Chuck was into, I guess you could say. I don't really know how else to put it, because I'm trying to find the correlation between him and the actual MK Ultra experiments, but I don't know if this... I mean, I know they're all intertwined, I know that, but I don't know if this in particular essay was written by someone in the study or not. It's Manas, Manas, reprint, lead article, Toward Unconditioned Man, volume 16, number 31, July 31st, 1963. I read a lot of it in the last podcast I did. I can actually drop the link for this if anyone's interested in reading it. It's pretty weird. Yeah. Okay. Alright, so this section of the essay is titled Frontiers, Crash Therapy, LSD, and Chemical Mysticism. The pros and cons of experiments in brain management via LSD, mescaline, and psilocybin are being hotly debated in the press as well as in professional journals. There is little doubt that extraordinary transformations of psychic orientation typically occur, particularly with LSD. There is also evidence that addicts, either alcoholics or heroin users, have often appeared to be cured as a result of some breaking of the personality pattern coincident with the chemical ingestion. The how and the why of this process is still shrouded in considerable mystery, and much wondering continues, largely because of the extraordinary experiences of an apparently mystical type which it frequently induces. LSD is sometimes thought of as a sort of instant zen. The closing paragraph of an article in Psychiatry for May by Dr. Sanford M. Unger of the National Institute of Mental Health provides a basis for evaluating the justifications offered for further experimentation with these psychologically potent chemicals. Dr. Unger writes, rapid personality change translated into language more congenial to behavioral psychology could be taken to describe a situation in which formally dominant or high probability responses, overt or mediational, were suddenly greatly reduced in frequency of occurrence. And, vice versa, uncommon responses, or those formally low in a hierarchy, appear with greatly elevated frequency. The degree to which such artificially induced learning has been sustained has been a function, as with all behavior, of the ebb and flow of environmental contingencies. Thus, to point the issue, do transcendental experiences at the human level, however they are interpreted, tread in the area of super enforcement with a potential for radically altering the probability of occurrences of heuristic mediating processes. For example, positive rather than negative self-concepts, which might channel behavior, at least temporarily, in new directions towards a quote-unquote new beginning? With Ruth Benedict's Apollonian Zuni, the tendencies of the modern West is to regard paranormal experiences indiscriminately and often with little idea of their nature as quote-unquote pathological, to be distrusted, feared, avoided. The Zuni Indian said Benedict, find means to outlaw them from his conscious life. He keeps the middle of the road, stays within the known map, does not meddle with disruptive psychological states. It would seem unfortunate were this zeitgeist to unduly prejudice the exploration of therapeutic potential in the drugs here discussed. In conclusion, let it be noted that the public health implications of drug-associated rapid personality change, should this phenomenon prove not to be a will-o'-the-wisp, are apparently great. Intensive investigation would seem a reasonable order of the day. While the language of the foregoing is quite technical, it is at least plain that from the standpoint of psychology, the pros for mind changing by means of LSD are impressive. Since forms of schizophrenia as well as reports of mystical experience indicate the reality of regions outside of the patterns of ordinary psychic life, we may expect to emerging of interest among ESP researchers and the laboratory men who collect data on the mind drugs, quote unquote, with the quote unquote self-psychologists such as Carl Rogers and A.H. Maslow. A question arises as to the relationship between the peak experience, or the process of self-actualization, and the crisis in psychic orientation which LSD sometimes induces. One recalls, for example, that the extraordinary effectiveness of the genius of Charles E. Diedrich, founder of Synanon, dates from an LSD encounter some 5 years ago. Diedrich, however, did not rush around advocating LSD for addicts and alcoholics. Walker Winslow's article, Synanon Revisited, summarizes. During the active period of LSD intoxication, the normal traits appeared merely in a sort of caricature. One phrase that came into his mind impressed him. He said, "It doesn't matter, but at the same time, it matters exquisitely." He would go to his room and give way to tears for an hour or more every day. Even with the seeming grief, there was euphoria. When the grief-bearing memories and the euphoria left, the strange feeling of omnipotence and omniscience that had been with him from the beginning continued. He felt that he could resolve all paradoxes, and indeed he did seem to confound many of the people he met with and argued with. This lasted for nearly 6 months, but after that it remained certain that he had undergone. This lasted for nearly 6 months, but after that it remained certain that he had undergone a personality change. As the psychiatrist who had given him the LSD put it, you were poised and were mustering your forces toward a goal that wasn't clear to you, and the LSD experience triggered those forces. Another LSD treatment simply made Chuck a little tipsy for a few hours. The omnipotence and omniscience of the earlier period had vanished, and he felt more sure of himself than he had before. Anyone who knows Chuck knows that he is a realist who has a very little belief in magic, chemical or otherwise, and yet he believes, with what seems good reason, that LSD was responsible for the personal clarity and drive from which Synanon emerged. He now thinks that LSD is not safe for alcoholics and addicts. The 3 alcoholics who took the drug with him have all gone to pot. Every member of Synanon who has taken LSD has returned to drugs or become impossible to deal with. In his case, however, LSD does seem to have released a man to meet his destiny. Synanon, Manas readers will recall, is a self-help institution for drug addicts founded about 5 years ago in Santa Monica, California. Those who are interested in the full story of this dramatic achievement in rehabilitation may obtain a pamphlet made up of Mana's article. Synanon, Manas readers will recall, is a self-help institution for drug addicts founded about 5 years ago in Santa Monica, California. Those who are interested in the full story of this dramatic achievement in rehabilitation may obtain a pamphlet made of Manas articles and other material by writing to the Synanon Foundation, 1351 Oceanfront, Santa Monica, California. The price of the pamphlet is $1. $1 for a pamphlet in 1963? What kind of pamphlet was that? Jesus. The present attitude at Synanon toward the use of LSD seems to be more ambivalent, or perhaps one should say qualified. Even within a truly therapeutic community, such as Synanon has amply proved itself to be, there is no guarantee that the psychological disturbances which sometimes occur after the taking of LSD can be handled. In general, the Synanon philosophy has no room for the expectation of basic changes in personality pattern, save those won by hard and constant personal effort. It is not the fear of reversion which is uppermost, but simply the conviction that no one and no thing, not even a miracle chemical, can do for you what you don't do for yourself. One might argue, of course, that this attitude itself creates a sound environment for investigation of the effects of LSD, but it seems unlikely that the use of such drugs will be encouraged by a group that found its way back to health and normal life by cultivating a philosophy of self-reliance and independence of even the medication sometimes used to ease the process of withdrawal. It is certain that only those who have gained the maturity to withstand psychic shocks of an undetermined extent would be candidates for LSD research. And that concludes that Manas journal essay that I found from 1963. Getting into that a bit about what they're talking about Synanon being such a place that really trained people to not be dependent on chemicals. That's a really old school philosophy, to just make people sober up with no drugs to ease the withdrawals. I remember I spent time at CEDU Rocky Mountain Academy, and there were times when new kids would come in having full-blown heroin withdrawals. I would be there for 1 year, and even though I hated the fucking program and I hated the cult, I would help the kids who were detoxing. I mean, imagine being 15, 16, and you're a heroin addict, and you get kidnapped in the middle of the night and taken to Idaho and just cold turkeyed. Fucking cold turkeyed. Like, no fucking Xanax, no goddamn anything. Of course, they did love to load us up with the serotonin inhibitors, the SSRIs. Every kid there showed signs of neurodivergency, whether it was autism or ADHD, and I'm not saying every single one, but let's just say 90%. I mean, this is my own personal opinion. You can't back this up with facts. There's no way to back it up with facts, because all of the doctors at CEDU Rocky Mountain Academy were diagnosing everyone with bipolar disorder. Raise your hand if you were diagnosed with bipolar disorder at Rocky Mountain Academy. I am the furthest thing from bipolar. I was put on other types of drugs, though, and that was where the CEDU Brown schools came in and changed it. I mean, Synanon, this is from 1963. I showed up at Rocky Mountain Academy in 1996. It's 33 years later, because that's not creepy. 33 years later. So this was a psyop. This was totally fucked, because kids like me are showing up. When I got there, I had been already on 100 hits of acid plus at one time. We're talking liquid. I mean, I was so naive that I thought that committing suicide because of the abuse in my family would fix everything. But I was so stupid. I mean, it wasn't like purposefully trying to commit suicide with LSD, but I kind of was like, oh, I don't give a fuck, so I'll take a bunch of LSD, and if I die, I die, because, you know, my family didn't want me and all that. And people like to physically hurt me. So I had to run away, and I really didn't want to be doing what I was doing. I can't totally get into my story because, you know, well, there's parts of my story that it's not that I'm not proud of them, it's just that, like, 15-year-olds aren't supposed to move kilos of cocaine, okay? It's not natural. I had to eat. I had to make my way as a homeless kid who had been kicked out of their house. I mean, what are you going to do? So after 6 months of living on couches, after my parents kicked me out, I really wanted to give up on life, and I just was already high on a bunch of hallucinogenics, and I drank a vial of acid just for shits and giggles. Well, I was tripping for a long time, and I was tripping when I came to RMA. So what I'm trying to say is, like, it was fucked up for me because they were doing these MK Ultra LSD tactics. Like, they were doing tactics that were used in the MK Ultra experiments. However, with us kids, they were trying to, Chuck's words, give you an LSD experience without LSD. So these tactics would kick your fight or flight, change your frequency. I mean, the list goes on and on. They were giving us out-of-body transcendental experiences when we were teenagers. Now, with that being said, Chuck's crazy fucking ass said that the purpose of his experiment was to breed, and this is verbatim, breed a league of mystics to bring humans into the 21st century. Okay? Parapsychology is not a joke. This is what the Cold War was about, folks. It was about a race to the Kundalini. It was about a race to seeing how they could force humans through trauma and LSD and mescaline, psilocybin, THCA specifically, cocaine in the 80s. I mean, these MK Ultra experiments, they never stopped. They're still happening. I interviewed a guy, he's going to be on the podcast. He was in the MK Ultra experiments in San Francisco at UCSF for intravenous cocaine. I mean, this shit is off the hook. So where am I going with this? Back to what I was saying about when I dosed the LSD after I had been kidnapped and taken to this place, this fucking cult, this weird ass place in the middle of nowhere. I literally was still tripping balls. So all these tactics that were supposed to be so severe to get people to quote unquote go there without drugs were being used on me while I was still, my third eye was fully fucking open. And the worst part was, they just kept drugging me for bipolar disorder, so I was like this zombie tripping on acid. I'll never forget Dr. Ulrich asking me, do you ever see anything that isn't there? And honestly, I said no, because, like, just because the room is moving doesn't mean I'm not, you know, that doesn't mean I'm seeing things that aren't there. Everything's just a little sparkly. But you know what? Those hallucinations went away. You know, I don't hallucinate. The LSD ran its course in my system. I was 15 years old. Yeah, sure as fuck I didn't die. That was by choice. I asked for help. My lungs were collapsing. I hadn't eaten or drinking water in 9 days. Because people were poisoning me with more drugs, and I was at a rainbow gathering, and there were predatory men around me, so I had gotten so afraid to drink or eat anything at all that when I was taken in an ambulance from Fremont in Seattle to Harborview in Seattle, one of my lungs was completely collapsed. And the doctors said if I was out for another 12 hours, I would have been dead. Creepy shit about that, my parents were called in to identify a body of a 15-year-old daughter the same day. When I got to the hospital, I was somewhat calm, but I was not okay. I was out of my mind on psychedelics and sleep deprivation and starvation. So when my parents came in and they tried to do the whole bullshit of fucking, oh, what happened to our poor child? You beat the shit out of me, opened the door, kicked me a few times, and said, get the fuck out of our house? Like, that's what happened. But then, of course, in public at the fucking hospital, we gotta pretend we care about our kid. So, that's what threw me over the edge in the hospital. I was kind of okay, like, coloring and stuff, and then my parents came in and they were gaslighting me. So, long story short, I just, yeah, I had to like just sort of hang out in this room, and my sister came. I trusted her a lot. I really trusted my sister a lot at the time. I didn't know she was going to kidnap me later and drop me off at a school. She was 21, I was 15. She came in the room, she calmed me down, and I got the help I needed until I sobered up. I got the help I needed until I sobered up enough to take my parents to court and divorce them in court. At which point I won my case, I was emancipated, and then illegally kidnapped and taken to this shithole. So yeah. That was how... I'm not here to just like feel sorry for myself. There's a lot of survivors that tell their story, and I support it. I support it, but I'm not here to kick a dead horse, If you went to RMA, you were fucking tortured. Period. No, you are not a victim. You're not a victim. Like, quote unquote, victim. See, the family, the CEDU family, if they perceive you as weak, as in that you are a survivor of serious torture tactics, which you are, the brainwashed ones, the weak-minded, they'll call you a victim because you're not normal because of it, but they're the Manchurian candidates. They are so asleep. They've been programmed so fucking deeply that they'll literally repeat, that place saved my life. If I didn't go there, I'd be dead. Sound familiar? Fuck that, okay? No, you wouldn't be dead if you didn't go to Rocky Mountain Academy. What the fuck are you talking about? Alright, it's not a thing. So, I'm going to continue to help survivors through bringing you information, because one of the most healing things about this is when you go down a rabbit hole and you realize that you're not actually fucking crazy. These people trafficked children. These people kidnapped children. These are federal offenses. Capital offenses. And the worst part about it is, it's the U.S. government, the shadow government, fucking created the people that created Rocky Mountain Academy and CEDU. Like, through their programs, they created Synanon. It does not specifically say in this paper that that was an MK Ultra experiment, but do the math. National Institute of Mental Health. Who funds those guys? The same people that fund the CIA. I mean, you can't make this shit up. Charles Diedrich did a bunch of LSD, and no, he didn't have an enlightening moment. KGB tactics were used. He was taught tactics that were used in the USSR, and that's all I know. And I am tracing it back. Everyone thinks that Charles E. Diedrich invented the game. He did not invent the game. Let me repeat that. Charles E. Diedrich did not invent the game. I will get more into that with articles and, fact-based research. However, I'll be the first to fucking say it. Charles E. Diedrich did not invent the game. So back to that day, let me just get this over with. Let me get into my kidnapping. I was 15 years old. I was a little hippie girl. I got emancipated by the courts. I was living with my sister. I was told that I had to go on a trip to Idaho. I said, fuck you, no, I don't want to go to Idaho. I did not trust anyone by this time. With good reason. Like I said, I already knew how to take care of myself, but I was trying not to do anything bad. I was not doing drugs, and I didn't want to deal cocaine or cannabis. So, I was trying to behave. The state said that I had to go for blood tests and certain medications based off of my mental state after this whole drug overdose, whatever you want to call it, that I did to myself. So I was doing those things. I was doing all the things and going to my doctor's appointments like the courts told me to. I was doing everything that the courts wanted me to. And then my sister said, if you don't go to Idaho with us, you cannot live with me. In other words, if I didn't listen to my sister, then I had nowhere to live. I didn't totally trust my sister, but I really did like 90% of the way. She was my big sister. She was my everything. My parents would not give us any money for food. They were so angry that I divorced them that they would not give us any money for food. And I was only 15 years old, so I could absolutely not have a fucking job. I tried to sell hemp necklaces on the steps of the Capitol building during marijuana protests, and I'd get a couple bucks like that. But I mean, like, I couldn't have a job. So that was that. I had to go. I think it was like a day in the middle of the week or something, like a Wednesday or Thursday. It's harder to talk about this than I ever thought it would be, but hey, here goes. I went out to get in the car, and when I went to open the trunk, they wouldn't let me open the trunk. And I didn't know why. Also, my mother had asked for my measurements. Just keep that in mind. So, okay, weird. We're getting a rental car. It was white. August 29th, 1996 is the day my life ended as I knew it. Not the drug overdose, not the almost dying of the drug overdose or the collapsed lungs or the living on the street. It was none of that almost killed me. It was literally being dropped off at this fucking hellhole. So, we get in the car, and we travel, and we eventually get to a town about 2.5 hours away in the state I'm emancipated in, not Idaho, and I have to go use the restroom, and my sister and my dad followed me into this burger joint. Like, they were, like, so weird. They followed me in there and walked behind me. And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Get off, Get off me. Get away from me. This is weird. So I go to use the restroom. Lo and behold, I walk out. And they're just, like, standing there. Like, neither one of them had to go to the bathroom, but they came in the fucking restaurant with me. Okay, weird. I get in the car. I'm in the front seat. We start driving. It's remote. Idaho. Sandpoint. You hit, Coeur d'Alene. We're going up the Panhandle. We hit Sandpoint. My dad has a piece of paper. And it says the name of the company that he works for on it. They literally took the time to take a map. It was before the days of GPS and all that shit. They took the time to take a map. And then, Xerox copy a logo of the company my dad worked for onto the map that's the level of deception that I was dealing with. So get through Bonner's Ferry, start heading down the road, the road to the school. By the way, all of the cults associated to Synanon or Synanon locations had the road. Fun fact. In my research, there's always the road. It's fucking weird. There's a long road to get in and out of all these places. So, I think we were about 4 miles away from the CEDU Rocky Mountain Academy campus when I said, where are we going? It's getting really remote out here. Where is this meeting at, Dad? This is the part that makes me feel bad even talking about it. Because this wasn't easy for my dad. And I don't really blame my dad as much as my mother, who conspired to do this because she didn't want to parent me. My dad had tears in his eyes, okay? And he said, we're not going to a meeting. We're taking you to a school. I immediately freaked out. Well, I said, what do you mean a school? I have to go to the doctor. I have to take my medications. And he said, don't worry, where you're going, they will have all of that taken care of. And I freaked the fuck out and tried to jump out of the car while it was moving, I don't give a fuck at that point. I'll die. I'll fucking die before I go there. And because all I'm thinking is mental hospital in the middle of nowhere. What the fuck are they gonna do to you? And my sister wrapped her entire arms around the top of my body from behind, in the back of the seat behind me, and held me against the seat while I'm screaming, crying, asking to be let go. Just let that sink in for a minute. I was kidnapped, you guys, against my will. There's a reason why my voice is disguised. We pulled up to the school, and it was the weirdest place I'd ever seen in my life. Big buildings made out of wood, trees. Never seen anything like it. The way the buildings were built were so strange. Not boxy, just almost like they could have secret compartments and hallways, and you wouldn't even know it because of the way everything was laid out. Nothing was a square. It's hard to explain. Some of the buildings were squares, yes, but the admissions building was so weird. I'm crying. I got a box of beads and hemp and all of my art materials with me, and I carry that up, and I'm crying, and Nicole Perry told me I couldn't have my stuff. And art is everything to me. And she told me I couldn't have my art. And I asked why. And she said, well, don't worry. You'll get it back. Nobody that's new can have anything. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then they took me into a room. And I was strip searched. I had to get completely nude from top to bottom. I was 15 years old. And there was another teenager in the room. And Nicole Perry. Nicole Perry, whatever you want to call her, she took a pair of scissors and cut off my hemp necklaces from around my neck. And that's when, my parents had to take it to the next level. All the other kids, when they were new, they got to have commissary clothes, which, God, they were so ugly. Bright blue t-shirts, bright yellow t-shirts, jean shorts, Wrangler jeans, definitely nerdy clothes, right? Well, my mom took it to the next level, and she had to buy clothes for me. that were not from the commissary, she had to pack in the trunk all of my clothes. This woman literally sat there sewing clothing for me to send with me after I was kidnapped by her husband. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard or been through in my life. I mean, like, how much of a sociopath do you have to be to sew clothes and go shopping and put all this stuff together for your daughter who you're having kidnapped and taken away? I mean, what exactly was the point? They could have just given us some money for groceries, or like, I was doing okay. I was going to I really don't, I still to this day, the RMA people would tell me all the time, if you didn't come here, you'd be dead. They would tell me, the second that you leave here, you're gonna die. Motherfucker, what? It's 2024. 50+% of my alumni are dead. 90% of those deaths are suicide related. You motherfuckers are the ones that made people die. The suicide cult is fucking real. Anyways, back to, strip searched and everything. Nicole had me strip searched. They stuck me with this girl from Santa Barbara that I did not get along with at all. They called them your big brothers and big sisters. Yes, big brother is a term used at Rocky Mountain Academy. Well, the clothes, I don't know if my mom did it on purpose, but I was always used to wearing like hippie dresses and shit, and my mom like packed these jeans that were like tight on me, and I had a bright blue t-shirt, I'll never forget it. This bitch must have bought the shoes too big for me on purpose. I had these big clodhopper white tennis shoes. And when you first get there, you're called a Voyager. Not by coincidence that many of the other cults use the term Voyager, including but not limited to Heaven's Gate. So I went up to the house with my big sister, and that's when I realized I was in a cult. I know I talked about this on the other podcast. I touched on this, but I realized I was in a cult. I came into this weird place. The house is a beautiful building. However, it's not like anything you've ever seen before. It had these huge windows. A very good friend of mine built it starting in 1982. This building was phenomenal. However, when you walked in, everyone looked the same, talked the same. It was really, really creepy. It was obvious that it was a cult. So anyways, that was when I first got there. This is going to be really, really triggering for some people, but I really want to tell my story, so I appreciate you, even listening to this and helping me to advocate for the troubled teen industry. So we're going to go ahead and get into what was passed today. Speaking of advocating for the troubled teen industry and kids in the troubled teen industry, we're going to go ahead and get into what happened with Congress. And I'm going to go ahead and read an article from the Associated Press. House passes bill backed by Paris Hilton to reform youth treatment facility. Washington, AP. The House passed legislation Wednesday requiring more oversight of youth residential treatment facilities, a feat for hotel heiress Paris Hilton, who has spent years lobbying lawmakers to regulate an industry marred by child abuse allegations. The Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act gained overwhelming bipartisan support in the House after passing the Senate unanimously last week. It will now go to President Joe Biden's desk to be signed into law. This moment is proof that our voice matters. that speaking out can spark change and no child should ever endure the horrors of child abuse in silence. Hilton said in a social media post following the vote, "I did this for the younger version of myself and the youth who were senselessly taken from us by the troubled teen industry." Hilton has spent the last several years testifying about the abuse she says she suffered years ago at the boarding school in Utah. Also, she claims to have been at Ascent up at Ruby Ridge and Northwest Academy, as well as the CEDU Running Springs campus. She was sent to Provo Canyon School for 11 months at age 17, where she says she was abused mentally and physically, recalling that staff members would beat her, force her to take unknown pills, watch her shower, and send her to solitary confinement without clothes as punishment. The 43-year-old said the treatment was so traumatizing that she has suffered nightmares and insomnia for years. Details of the abuse were also chronicled in a documentary she released called This is Paris in September 2020. The legislation passed this week would establish an interagency work group under Department of Health and Human Services that would bring greater transparency around treatment of youth in these programs, particularly when staff use restraints and seclusion rooms as form of punishment. Hilton's advocacy has helped change laws to protect minors in at least 8 states, including in Hilton's home state of California, where similar legislation will go into effect on January 1st. Alright, this is a win, but it's also very suspicious. The Department of Human and Health Services are the ones who were behind the experiments on children at Synanon. So, when I started writing and researching my book when I was diagnosed with stomach cancer in 2020, basically, I got really into it and went down the rabbit hole. I didn't have a VPN on, and I was calling the real estate agent who was selling the Ascent Northwest Academy campus. I was basically putting my nose places where it didn't belong. I'm not saying that had anything to do with it, but at the exact same time, Paris Hilton came out with all of this foofy, not foofy, but Paris is foofy in her own right, and then she comes out with, I was so traumatized, and like a lot of surface level trauma. What I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying necessarily she's bad. I'm saying that the way she has presented these schools is 100% butterflies and fucking unicorn farts compared to what it actually was. You think about the government and then you think about the shadow government. There's more to things than meets the eye is what I'm saying. Duality, 11:11. What is above is so below. Okay? Everything has a down and an up. I do not fucking trust these government officials to come in and quote unquote supervise punishments. How do you supervise restraining a kid? I mean, I get it. Children have problems. This is necessary. Some places are necessary, but is there a track record of when DSHS gets involved that things go better? No. Not in the slightest fucking bit. So survivors need to be checking and balancing these places. Not any more government officials who are dirty because they were a part of the Synanon child abuse experiments in the fucking first place. These are the same agencies. Oh, you think it's a coincidence that they're all in cahoots with Paris Hilton? Come on, guys. Children were raped. Forced to lay on the ground with grown people with your stomach on your head on their stomach, their head on your stomach. Your head is on someone's stomach. And you're laying there staring at the ceiling, listening to music that was recorded at Caribou Ranch outside of Boulder, Colorado? Yeah. Hollywood, Synanon, Caribou Ranch. These guys, they're all tied in together so much so to the point that they made us even listen to their music at RMA. Chicago, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Rod Stewart, Nash's son, Rod Stewart's daughter, they went to CEDU schools, you guys. These people are all in cahoots with each other, and they're all in cahoots with the government. And I'm not saying that to sound, oh my god, I'm so fucking crazy. I am saying that based off of facts and my research. NIMH is dirty as fuck. And as this book rolls out and this podcast rolls out, I will be sharing my research, okay? I would not be making these claims if I did not have something to back it up with, because guess what? On this podcast, I admitted that I ate a lot of fucking LSD at one point in my life, right? That doesn't make me crazy necessarily. Mad. What it does mean, though, is that I have the obligation to prove my research beyond a reasonable doubt, so I don't sound like a crazy person, because, you know, who's gonna listen to someone that took 100 hits of LSD? That's the fucking point, guys. That's why they beat you down. If you're a survivor, you're a whistleblower, that's why they beat you down. They choose traumatized people. They choose drug addicts. They do it because if you speak, if you talk out against them, you are just a quote-unquote crazy drug addict. This is all by design, okay? None of it's a coincidence. There is nothing new under the sun. These guys are still operating in Germany. Half of the people, you don't want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you anyways because you deserve to know. Half of the people who were in the CIA were KGB. Over half. Where did they go? They just went away? No, they didn't go away. What I'm trying to tell you is that USSR tactics were implemented by the CIA using MKUltra, and that turned into Diedrich implementing his own game with the tactics that was rebranded over and over and over and over, and it will not fucking stop, you guys. Have you ever been in a work retreat workshop and you walk in and all of the chairs are in a circle and everyone faces each other to talk about their feelings or go over tactics that are less than cozy feeling? These are the light versions, okay? There's so many different schools using this right now. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Back to the smush pile. When we would lay there, they would play songs. It would be like 7 o'clock at night, and they would play these songs. They would play like, You Left Me Just When I Needed You Most. Like, they would play these emotional songs, and people would cry, and everyone would pet each other's hair. Now you're talking, I am 15 years old, my head is on a grown man's stomach, someone in their 30s, the back of my head is on their stomach, and I am laying there staring at a ceiling next to some guy that works there, pedophiles, and they're petting my hair. Like, at the time, I felt like I was 25 years old because, you know, I am who I am. And I really did. I felt like I was older. So I guess for me, feeling like I was a grown-up, I didn't totally understand what was happening to me at the time, you guys. You guys think I'm bringing the truth? I only started waking up to this in 2016. I only took the blue pill on this, and I knew there was something wrong. I had no idea the roots of it. I had no idea how deep it went. After we would smush, everyone would hug each other. And I distinctly remember specific men that I would love to name names of. Love to name their names. I won't just yet, but there were men who would hug you after these smushing sessions, and they would hug you really, really hard, and they would have an erection, and for me at least, dig it into me, like as they were hugging me. And I don't know why, other than that I was brainwashed to an extent that I couldn't say anything. I mean, what would they have done to me, you guys? If I tried to say that a staff member hugged me with a boner and it made me uncomfortable, I probably would have been put on a full-time for lying. So young girls and boys were exposed to pedophiles. The pedophiles were of male and female nature. Do not think that just because the women were there that they were not fucking pedophiles. One in particular person used to put me on bans from my boyfriend 24/7 and hang out with him all the time. And let me tell you, he was a good-looking kid. The torture that was endured when it comes to that type of thing is, it's scarier that I didn't know what happened to me. It's scarier that their tactics were so traumatizing that it just got shoved down, shoved down, shoved down. That place saved my life. Shove it down. If I didn't go there, I would be dead. Shove the feelings down. You know, it did us no fucking justice. Like, this experiment was bullshit. And it was successful in the way that they managed to do satanic baptisms. They managed to have pedophilia. They managed mind control. They managed to use government op tactics. And the whole time, as a survivor, even into your 30s, you don't even know that that's what they fucking did to you. How the fuck do you do something to a human being so sinister, and that human being goes on to not even realize what was done to them? I'm a product of child trafficking. I am a product of a pedophile child trafficking ring. You do not believe me? I don't give a fuck. If you say I'm a victim, I don't give a fuck. I am here for the survivors. I am here to say no more survivors picking on survivors. You guys are like vultures. It's fucking gross. We're not at the school anymore. You don't need to turn on your own. You don't need to pick the bones of the people that you say you care about or have something in common with. The oppositional, the way people turn on each other and go against each other. I had to stick up for one of my friends because these bitches are crazy. I mean, they just like tear each other down. Why? Because it was taught to us to hate. Only we're not at the school anymore, you guys. And the Eagles, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. That's what that's about. You are always going to be a Synanite. It's not going to go away. When you die, you'll be on a list. You're on lists with celebrities. You're part of the 1%. You're the 1% that they use for false flags, is what you are. You're the 1% that they can easily trigger. Many of you have done great in life, and that makes me happy, but it also makes me scared of you. If you could go through that whole thing and then you act like a fucking zombie with your little house and your little life and your little blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying this for everybody that's happy. Like, I want people to be happy. I'm not saying this, but some of the people that it seemed to have not affect, like, literally scare the shit out of me. I don't know. That's just me. I can't understand how you could go through all of that and just be like an okay person. Maybe I don't know, but yeah. Side note about the smush pile, it was very similar to the way that they found the bodies at Jonestown, and that's gonna be important later because I will be breaking down some things about Jonestown that will not, well, they will surprise you, but they won't. So yeah, man, I mean, I do get out there on some shit, but I will be organizing and bringing facts and dropping links and everything like that as I get more into this. I am writing my book, but it is very time consuming and it's going to take me a while to get it all together. So I have to get something out there, you guys. We have got to advocate for these children that are still in these fucking places, all right? These kids are still there. I'll never forget the feeling of like picking rocks out of snow in negative 20-degree weather on a work assignment. Yes, that's a USSR coined term. Google it. On a work assignment, wool pants, all that shit, freezing. You can try to, when you're in the wood corral, I'll break down the wood corral. The wood corral is where the new Voyager students were sent to be broken in the beginning, where we chopped wood, sawed, two-man sawed logs into rounds, mauled it, and made kindling, and then wheelbarrowed it to the entire school because we were only on wood heat. We heated our buildings with wood. Like, we didn't have gas heat. And the kids did it. It was a labor camp. So I will never forget sitting there picking rocks out of snow and looking at the clock knowing I had 12 hours left out there, or 10 hours, or however long, in the negative 20 degrees. When I was in the wood corral, I could maul wood like a motherfucker. Like, I am really good at chopping wood. But that's what would keep you warm. When you're having to pick pebbles out of snow for 12 hours, 10 hours, endlessly, there's this feeling of slavery. There's a feeling of torture that you can't describe. Your stomach sinks in and you're so cold. And you wonder how you're going to get through it. You wonder, how will I make it through not only this 10-hour, 12-hour work assignment day in negative 20 degrees, how will I make it through the next 2 years of this? I can't get out. If I leave the town, people get paid to turn me in. If I go up over Mount Clifty, if I could access my backpack and all of my shit, a tarp, my sleeping bag, and a stove, if I could access that, I would have been up and out over Mount Clifty. It's fucking terrifying, okay? It's fucking terrifying. We were kids, we were stuck there, we were fucking fish in a barrel for pedos. That's it. Hope you guys have an awesome day. Can't wait to get on here again. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Rebranding Evol at gmail.com. REBRANDING at gmail.com. If you have any ways to help survivors, do not hesitate to reach out. If you are a survivor, I'm here for you. And please show your support by actually subscribing to the podcast and the channel. I will be doing more of this as we go. As the book gets done, I obviously will be letting everyone know where to purchase that, how to get that. But as of right now, I am just going to keep blasting content on these subject matters because it is literally endless. There is so much information to be had. So hit the subscribe button, like this video, comment, do all the things, engage, help out the algorithm, you know what I'm saying? And help out the survivors. We need your support. We want to be heard. Thank you for being here.